Hello, and welcome to my seminar, Protecting Yourself and Your Loved Ones Through Guardianships. So, I have to first tell you that I am not an attorney, but I am a certified senior and probate real estate specialist. So, I work with a lot of attorneys and I go through the probate and guardianship process a lot in my business. So, I'm here to kind of talk to you about some of my experiences over the years and what you need to know about guardianships. So let's start out by discussing. A lot of people know guardianships more with the fact of maybe children that are under 18 or maybe um, family members or friends that are disabled. Um, there are guardians for those. But a lot of people don't realize that when their senior loved one has some sort of dementia, that they might need a guardian as well. Now, when it comes to this, it doesn't necessarily need to be a senior. It could be someone even younger. I have a high school friend whose sister was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when she was in her mid to late 50s. So it doesn't mean that the person who's going through the guard that needs the guardian is necessarily someone that's older. It could be someone that's younger as well. So I'm going to share my screen and let's go through some of the slides and we will discuss protecting yourself and your loved ones through guardianships. So let's first talk about what exactly is a guardian. We'll talk about, let's just get the definition of what that is through Wikipedia and the dictionary. A guardian is someone that is legally a person who has the legal authority to care for the person and property interests of another person, and that's usually called the ward. They are the person that's getting the guardian, that's needing the guardianship. We'll just put it that way. Guardianships also referred to as conservators. It's a legal process utilized when people can no longer make or communicate safe and sound decisions about their personal or personal property and or persons. So basically what this means is these are folks that cannot make their own decisions on a day-to-day basis. So when you are someone, when you have a loved one that's going through some sort of dementia, um, and they don't have either a trust or anything in place, basically what they're doing is they have to go to the courts and someone has to become their guardian. That's basically what this is. And some of you have probably experienced it. Some of you are probably just going through this. Most people do not realize that when there's a loved one with dementia, dementia is one of those things where it can slowly come in. So for instance, maybe you've heard of the term sundowners. So maybe your loved one is can make sound decisions during the day, but by the evening, afternoon, evening, they're getting too tired and their ability to make those decisions have changed. So I'm not here to tell you when to get that guardian, but I will tell you this. They need to understand what they are signing basically to be able to take care of themselves. If that means bringing in home health, do they realize that that's what they're doing? If they need to just do everyday day-to-day situations. Usually someone with dementia, families will notice that there are some different things going on. So Some questions I always like to ask is, can your loved one make the decision regarding their own health care? Is that something that they can make on a rational decision? Can they make decisions regarding their finances? That's a big one, because people with dementia, the experience that I have had with my clients, I've had situations where I had a son who ended up with his mother, who she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But before that, she had racked up $100,000 worth of credit card bills just from watching. She couldn't sleep at night, so she would watch infomercials, and she was buying all this stuff. And he did not realize until after all of this that she ended up having this dementia, that she ended up having $100,000 in credit card debt. And many times we as family members, when we have a loved one going through this, we don't even know that these are issues. But these are some signs to kind of watch for. Basically, can your loved one do their making everyday decisions on everyday items? Many times a lot of family members and a lot of people think of dementia as, oh, I forgot something. But dementia can be in different forms. I have seen behavioral issues. I have seen a loved one go through uh, a lot of anger issues, and they weren't normally like that. There's also those little things you can see, like maybe mom always had, her makeup put on, and she took a shower every day, and she was always dressed up really nice. And then now that she's gotten older, she doesn't, take a shower every day. Maybe she doesn't really brush her teeth anymore. Maybe she wears her pajamas every day. Those are little signs that you can see that something just isn't right. And so sometimes it's those little things that we just kind of slough underneath the table. Oh, it's okay, mom's by herself, she doesn't need to get dressed every day. But those are items that you need to be aware of, and you'll learn that going through this series with Elaine and some of the resources that are part of this dementia conference. So I'm actually super excited that you are here, because this is really, really important information. So when it comes to someone that's going through dementia, does that person have a trust? And if they have a trust, do they have the correct documentation with that trust? So for instance, there are a few states that have mental power of attorney. Most states have medical and financial powers of attorney, but there are a few states that do have the mental power of attorney. And that is when you can actually, when you put your trust together with an attorney, they can put that in there so that if for some reason your loved one doesn't seem to have it together, or maybe they're not making rational decisions and you have to take over, those documents are what you can take over. So now let's say you don't have a trust in place. Let's say mom and dad or your loved one, grandma and grandpa, just never put one in place. When I speak a lot to senior groups regarding putting trust together, I do get a lot of people that say, I'm just going to let my son take care of it, or I'm just going to let my daughter take care of it. And I understand, because they don't want to make those decisions. They don't want anybody in the family to be mad that they chose this person over that person. And I get it. However, if they don't make those decisions when they are of sound mind, what happens is they have to end up going through a guardianship. And you're going through the probate courts. So you're basically going through a probate while your loved one is alive. And that's basically what a guardianship is. They can't take care of themselves anymore. They can't maintain making rational decisions. They need to make sure that their finances are maintained. They need to make sure that their health care is maintained. It may be as simple as they can't make those decisions on taking care of their home, or many times someone with dementia will have a hoarding situation. That's not always the case, but sometimes that is the case with dementia. I've seen lots of behavioral issues over the years with families that I've gone through with guardianships that have those emotional situations. And you think, oh, it's just mom or dad, living alone. Maybe they're getting depressed, but it very well could be the beginning of dementia. And you don't realize that until it's gotten even bigger and more of a problem. So that is something to really think about when you have a loved one going through this. So if obviously having a trust in place is the best way to go. If your loved one does not have a trust in place, then you have to do what's called the guardianship. And we just discussed this, but most of your trust will have the medical power of attorney and the financial power of attorney. And sometimes they can be the same person, and sometimes they can be two different people. Sometimes maybe there's a loved one in your family that's a CPA, and you decide they would be the better one to put as the financial power of attorney. And then maybe there's another family member that maybe is closer, maybe a local family member that's closer that can be more the medical power of attorney. But like I said, you also have to have the mental power of attorney to go through to avoid going through this process. So for instance, my mother has a very good friend, dear friend, that's in her mid to late 90s. And one of her daughters is the medical power of attorney. She comes every 6 months and she takes her to doctor's appointments and dentist appointments and maintains kind of those things. Her son happens to be the financial power of attorney, and that's just because he owns a CPA firm and he's kind of very detailed oriented, knows where the money's going, makes sure that the bills are paid when they've gone to the doctor's offices, those types of things. So like I said, if you don't have a trust, then you're basically going through what's called the guardianship process, and that is through the courthouse. The courts take this very serious. It's not just, oh, we're just going to put somebody in charge of mom's affairs or dad's affairs or grandma's affairs or your neighbor's affair. They take this serious because when you're going through a guardianship, you basically are taking away somebody's rights. And the courts take this extremely serious. They do not take this lightly. So what happens when you go through that process? So you may want to apply to be the guardian. So of course you will have to have your own attorney, but your loved one going through the process will also have their own attorney. Your loved one basically will have a team of experts around them. The courts give them their own attorney because they need to be represented of themselves. The other people that are part of your loved one's teams could be a social worker, definitely an investigator. What that investigator does is the investigator will go in, they will actually talk to your loved one's doctors. If they've had home health for a while, they will talk to the home health care companies. And those companies, they maintain documentation of everything. They want to know, the investigators want to know, Does that doctor feel that they can make decisions on their own? Does that doctor feel that they maybe need a little more help on that in that aspect? The caregivers, they'll ask the caregivers, what's that loved one like? Can they maintain their own decisions? Are they acting a little different? What is going on with that loved one situation? And so it takes sometimes many months to go through this process because, like I said, they are basically taking your loved one's rights away. So they don't want to take somebody's rights away without knowing for a fact that they really cannot maintain or make decisions on their own. That this is a very, very serious situation. And I can't reiterate that enough. Just because when you take somebody's rights away, a guardianship, most people think, oh, I'm just going to pay mom's bills or I'm just going to maintain, getting her to the doctor. It's a lot more than that. When they take somebody's rights away, they cannot make any decisions on their own anymore. They cannot vote anymore. They are literally basically the guardian that's going to take care of them is going to be their voice. And so that is why the courts take this extremely serious. So your team, your loved one will have a team of experts. And once they have gathered all of this information, and it sometimes takes a few months to go through this process because they are gathering all the information. They want to make sure they talk to every single person that is involved in your loved one's life. And they want to make sure that they talk to every single doctor, every single caregiver. Sometimes they will talk to neighbors if the neighbors have been maintaining. These are the things that they are going through during this process that you're going through the courts. In the meantime, if you are the one that wants to become the guardian, you have a whole thing to do yourself. You have to have a background check, you have to be bonded. A lot of things go through the process with you at the same time your loved one is going through this process as well. Now that we've had the pandemic, many courthouses were shut down for a long time. However, when it comes to guardianships, a lot of them were still open. Many of them may not be in person like they used to be, but they will do them through Zoom meetings and different things like that, because obviously they want to maintain the integrity of the person who needs the help, and they don't want them to end up staying in a situation that's not good for them. Last year, probably one of my hardest guardianships last year was a husband and wife. The wife had had some memory issues for a very long time, and the husband was the caregiver. And everything was going fine until the husband ended up having a stroke. So he ended up at the hospital. The neighbors were trying to help with the wife. She ended up falling and ended up in a rehab. And doctors finally said, okay, we cannot have this woman go back to the home and have her husband care for her when he can't even care for himself. So it was a situation where the husband had his attorney to try to apply for her guardian, and the wife had her own attorney. They went through that process, interviewing doctors and social workers and neighbors and caregivers, and they did discover that she definitely had some sort of dementia. But she didn't just have dementia, she actually had a behavioral type dementia. So they ended up deciding to put her into a uh, not just a memory care, but a behavioral memory care. The one thing that I will say is when it comes to deciding what to do with your loved one, a lot of people want to keep them home and take care of them themselves, and that is very admirable. But it can also be very stressful on a loved on yourself and your family. So many times it's really important to get the care your loved one needs when they're going through dementia. Bring in home health care, bring in maybe a housekeeper to maintain the house twice a month, bring in someone that can maybe make meals for them and shower them and do things like that. And it's okay to do that. It's okay not to be the caregiver yourself. Sometimes you are in a better situation if you have someone else maintain the care for your loved one, or if you decide to move your loved one into a memory care. I deal with a lot of families that decide to go down that road towards the latter part of their transition. And a lot of times the families feel very, very guilty for going through this process and putting their loved one in a memory care. I will tell you this, your loved one is probably in the best situation that they can be in going into a memory care. It's harder on us than it is on them. They don't really know where they're going. And a lot of times the family members feel guilty for it because they know they're going to be locked up in this community. But I will tell you this. After my families go through this process and they finally either get the help, the in-home healthcare company, or they put them into a memory care of some kind, and they can actually be the daughter or the son or the grandchildren or the neighbor again. It is a relief, and knowing that your loved one is getting that 24 hours, 7 day a week, 3, 4 meals a day, exercise, um, um, trying to work on puzzles to keep their mind going. That's what they need when you are trying to maintain them and work and have a family life. Sometimes you just stick them in front of a TV, and that's like the worst thing that could happen for someone with dementia. And you'll learn this through this process as well, with all of the resources that are out there for you. So it's okay. And I don't want you to feel guilty if you do decide to put your loved one in a memory care. Sometimes that is really the best thing for them. So going through this guardianship process can really take a toll on you, but just remember your final destination is to really give the help and the guidance that you need for your loved one going through this process. So, your loved one going through this process will have a team of experts in the courts to go through. Everybody gets together after they've done all their investigations, and the social worker has spoken to everybody, and the attorneys speak with each other. Then they decide who that who that guardian is going to be, and that loved one actually does need someone to help maintain those finances or those medications or the health care of that person. Um, so let's say you decide you want to be the guardian. My case last year that we were talking about earlier, the husband ended up deciding not to be the guardian, and it ended up being a nephew. And that was really the best thing for him because the client himself needed to take care of himself. And we moved him into a independent community so he could get the 3 meals a day and maintain his social life and just take care of himself. And we moved his wife into a behavioral memory care. So the nephew ended up being the guardian. So some of the responsibilities of a guardian, a lot of times people think, oh, I'm just going to write a check or I'm just going to do this. The courts take this job extremely serious. So, what are some of the responsibilities for a guardian? As a general rule, everything you do, whether it's with money or the property, must be approved by the courts. You need to make sure that there is no cash assets, or the non-cash assets are secured. Um, you need to set up a brand new bank account. So if your loved one has a Social Security check coming in direct deposit, or maybe they've got some sort of a payment from securities or investments that they have maybe coming into their account, all of those need to go into this new account. And they do that because they want, in the end, you have to give back to the courts a documentation that shows what's going in and what's going out. You definitely do not want to mix the estate property or funds with your own or anybody else's. There is no commingling of any funds. They want to see clean documentation. Money coming in is actually going out to the person that is being cared for. So they do not want to see borrow or lended money from the estate at all. They need you as the guardian. They need you to maintain complete and accurate updated records of all funds that are being received and dispersed, assets that are being sold or purchases. So for instance, my couple last year, we had to sell their home. And so the nice thing about working with a real estate agent that understands this, at the very end, the title company will give you a document, and it's basically a statement. It's like usually 2, maybe 3 pages, and it gives you line by line of what came in. So the buyer gave you X amount of money for the house. The taxes were prorated. The HOA was prorated. So the buyer comes in, takes over the HOA as soon as they are, the owners of the home. Title will give you that document at the very end. That document is what I sent to the courthouse so that they could maintain where all those fees were going to. It included the real estate fees, it included taxes, it included anything that is connected with that house. This situation that I did last year, we ended up, they had to split the funds. So the home was, for round numbers, let's just put it this way. The home maybe profited, let's say $400,000. 200,000 went to the husband for his maintaining his care at his independent living community, and 200,000 went into the new bank account where the family member that was the guardian pays for the memory care, the health care, the doctor bills, any of the prescriptions and things like that. So we did that for a husband and wife situation. If there's just a single loved one, then those funds, all of those funds get directed to that new bank account, and that is what ends up paying for that loved one's care and all of their maintains just the everyday living expenses. So like I said, being a guardian, the responsibilities are huge, and it's okay if you decide not to be a guardian. If this is too much for you, the courts will get a guardian for your loved one. Now there is a fee for that, so that's just to be aware that those are some of the things that happen during that time. So let's talk about what's required every year if you do decide to end up being a guardian. The guardian needs to be bonded, needs to be insured. They have to go through a background check. They have to give a yearly expense document to the courthouse, because the courthouse wants to make sure that that person is maintaining their expenses correctly. So they want a spreadsheet to show accounts receivable and accounts payable. if you decide to keep someone, if you are the guardian and you decide to keep your loved one at home and have home health care come in and maintain some of those things that you would get in a memory care, that's fine. But the courts require that the home health care and all caregivers be licensed and certified. You can't have a non-licensed, neighbor come in and pay them. They want to make sure that that person that's being cared for is being cared for in the best that the ability that they can. So home health care companies are usually brought in during this time. They are licensed, insured. Any other vendors that come in, say you have a plumbing problem or a termite problem, or a housekeeper, or some sort of pest control, they want to make sure all those people are licensed and insured because they are coming into the home with that loved one. So, like I said, the courts maintain this loved one's. The job of the guardian is extremely serious, and you have to maintain that loved one almost better than you maintain yourself, because sometimes you can say, oh, I'm too tired today, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to do that. But you can't do that with someone that you are a guardian for. You have to, everything that you do with that person, it's all about the loved one or the ward that you are guardian for. So you need to make sure that that is something that is highly maintained during that process. um, I had a situation years ago where um, the loved one was single. Her husband had passed away, and we were finally moving her into a memory care. She had fallen and broken a hip, and the family just decided it was best for her to go into a memory care. Um, Her husband had always maintained the house completely. So when we went to go and sell the home, we found out that the entire roof needed to be replaced because there were termites everywhere. So we had to have a termite company come out, and we had to have a roofing company come out, because the 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 loved one did not know how to maintain the home because the husband always did it. And that seems crazy for some of us who are more independent, but you have to realize that some of these seniors are of the age where the spouse took care of a lot of things. My grandmother did not learn how to drive until she was in her 30s. So it's a whole different world for those of us that are a lot more independent. So, but you have to work with the person that you're with, and you have to adjust how you do things depending on that person. So, so just things to think about. Remember this, that there is hope, and there are all kinds of resources out there. Um, if you decide to keep your loved one in the home, that is okay. That is not a problem. Just know that if you are the guardian, you need to make sure that you maintain everything with that home. Not just the caregivers that are coming in, but the landscapers, make sure the mail's picked up, make sure that there is, food and water, and they're showering every day or a couple times a week, having personal care taken care of, going to the doctor's appointments. These are all things that a guardian takes care of. um, I had a situation a while ago where the daughter was maintaining her mother in a personal home, and she was the caregiver. Well, the daughter ended up passing away in the middle of the night, and they didn't have a caregiver coming, or an outside company coming and checking on them. So it took a few weeks for the police to finally come, because other family members could not get a hold of this woman who was taking care of her mother, and unfortunately they both passed away. um, So it is good to have some sort of a backup plan, you know. Make sure that if you are out of state, have someone check your loved one in on a daily basis. Make sure that they have eaten that day. Make sure that they are dressed that day. Um, it's really, really important when you're dealing with someone with dementia, because they can't do it for themselves. You are their eyes and their ears. So I hope that helps and explains what a guardianship is and what the process is. It's not, it sounds very overwhelming, and it is a big process. I will tell you, it can be costly, because you are basically going through a probate while the person is alive. The guardianships go through the probate courts, and those uh, those um, courts are just looking out for the loved one. They want to make sure that everything is maintained. And that's why your loved one gets a team of people when you go through a guardianship. So just remember that if you decide to be the guardian, and it's okay if you choose not to, or it's okay if you start down as a guardian and decide, you know what, this is too much for me. I can't do it anymore. It's better not to go through that. You want to really, if you make the decision to be the guardian, you really want to know that right up front. And that's why it's so important to know what are those responsibilities to being the guardian. You want to make sure that you are going to be the one to maintain your loved one's care and financial help. Um, a lot of times, um, there's a lot of fraud that goes on. And unfortunately, fraud goes on before they've had a guardian. And so the courts will go back and find whatever, situation is there, because they want to make sure that that loved one hasn't been taken advantage of. So that's another thing. Fraud is such a huge thing when it comes to working with someone with dementia of any capacity, because they know that they can be taken advantage of pretty easily. So they are very, very serious about that responsibility and making sure that nobody has taken advantage of that loved one. So I'm going to put in I do have duties of power of a guardian for an estate. I will put this inside our document section, and you are welcome to have it. Like I said, I am not an attorney, but I work with a lot of attorneys. I've gone through this process many, many times. Each guardian is going to be different, but what I've explained to you is kind of the basics of what the guardianship is and how it's done through the courts. So it doesn't matter where you are. When you go through a guardianship, most courthouses are going to be very consistently the same. You have to apply for the guardianship if you want to be that person's guardian, and the person who's going through, the loved one that's needing the guardianship, will always have a team behind them, and the courts will be very careful to before taking their rights away, to maintain all of their making sure that they can make those decisions. Because like I said, the courts, the judges are very careful not to take somebody's rights away too soon. So they do go through that process, and it is a process. Um, and it can be costly. That money can come out of the estate. Most of my situations are the family has to sell the home to pay for the care for the home, for the ward or the loved one. The home has to be sold to get the money out. It's usually the biggest asset for somebody to take the money out of the home to maintain the care for the next 3 to 5, 10 years. So just know that there is hope out there, and it's okay to put your loved one in a memory care. It's going to be harder on you than it is on them. And just know that they will be cared for 24/7. It's okay if you decide to keep them at home. Just make sure you have the right home health care company and the right vendors to help maintain the health and well-being of that loved one. And it's okay to not be a guardian. It's a big responsibility and not everybody can do it. So just know that there are options for your loved one, even going through a guardianship. Um, if you have any questions or need a good attorney, I've got a handful of great attorneys. If you're out of state, I can get you attorneys from out of state as well. Just know that the guardianship process is going to go through the probate court where your loved one is living, where they have their residence. So if you are out of state, you will need to either solicit an attorney within that state, or you will have to come and go to some of the court cases as well. They will give you plenty of notice to know. They are doing Zoom meetings now. So a couple of my guardianships at the beginning of this year, when this happened, we did conference calls. So just know that the courthouse is there to help you and not to make it a harder process than what it already is. But just know that there is help out there, there are resources, and hopefully there will be options for you for your loved one. But I highly recommend, if you are at the beginning stages of some sort of dementia, talk to an attorney, try to get a trust put together. Obviously, they have to know what they're signing. So if they're at that stage where they don't understand, they won't be able to sign a trust. They will have to go through a guardianship, and somebody else will have to maintain that care for them. So feel free to call me for any questions. You can also put questions in the chat and we can go back and forth. I am super excited that you've decided to be here at the Successful Aging Workshop, and you will have so many great resources by the end. And everybody here has been vetted. Everybody here works in the industry. If we don't have an answer, we know someone that does. So please, please, please ask the questions you need. No question is too small or too big. If we don't know it, we will get you in the right direction. So thank you for coming and talking about protecting yourself and your loved ones through guardianships. Feel free to call me anytime, text me, or leave me an email. Anything you decide would be great. Thanks so much, and I hope you have an amazing day.